good over there too.
Wow, it's good beer.
Thanks. What'd you say? Yes, you are? Or no, you're not?
Sir.
All right. Was one of your fingers snap better than the other one?
Yes, I'm right-handed.
See,
I can do it with my left one. But I'm not very good at
I'm
it.
not very good at it. Well, I'm opposite though, because I'm right-handed, but I snap better with my left.
Whoa. How the hell did you... Really?
That's the shit out of me.
Well, but I practiced this one, though.
You practice snapping?
Because I can't do it with this one. Some people are really good at it. Like
if my hands are a little wetter, I can do... Oh, no, that's the other one.
But...
Nah. Just not good at it. You got them both the same? Huh.
No, definitely not.
Send us your experiments. Let us know how you...
Are you ambidextrous?
Yeah.
Can you snap with your... No, I can even snap my toes a little bit. This right one.
Your toes?
Almost, because they have a real...
What, like your big toe
I'm not
on
taking
your
my
second
shoe off.
toe?
Yeah.
Huh.
I used to
don't
do it
think
all
I
the
can do
time.
that. I mean, I can move them. I don't think I can snap them.
Oh. Yeah.
Everybody watching is trying to snap their toes right now.
Yeah.
You got to take a shoe off. Don't try to do it with your... But...
Huh.
Yeah, that's just this one. Just my right foot one.
I mean, that's a unique talent, I think.
Thank you.
Welcome to Fireside Tats.
Welcome back.
Episode 45.
Oh, 45.
That's
Oh,
right.
Nice. Heading on up there.
Yep. We're getting close to 50.
Moving on up. 50 is going to be the
50
good one.
is going to be huge.
Blowout.
Oh, yeah. Over the top.
I already know. I barely remember it.
When do we
Yeah. Yeah,
Porsche?
50, 51. Yeah. We have to take turns. We'll get it a day a week. That'll be cool.
Day and a half. If
Day and a half, maybe. We have to
get rid
we
of
have to do
some
the
of
math,
crew,
break
we'd
it down
be-
by the
yeah,
hours.
Good, fine. Yeah, we'd be fine with that.
Oh, hey.
What are we gonna talk about today?
We're gonna. So if you didn't watch episode 44, you're gonna be lost because this is a continuation of episode 44.
Oh, yes.
How to Train Your Dragon.
How to Train Your Dragon, part 2.
But right. So before that, though, go ahead and hop on over to firesidetats.com. Sign up for our mailing list. Like us on Facebook.
Two thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. We're about to, starting with this episode right here,
Tweet us out.
we're going to change our, well, no, probably the episodes before this, we're going to change our iTunes intro so you don't have to listen to the entire intro. That's really annoying in the car. I never really thought about it, but then I was listening to one, and it's like, you know, it's one thing when you're watching our intro and there's things going on. But when you're, yeah, but when you're listening to it, it's kind of drags.
You think it's a little much?
It's a little much, so we're just going to cut something really short. So if you listen to us now, you'll appreciate our intro being shorter.
Right. But if you don't like the shorter one, let us know.
Let us know. We'll whatever.
We'll make it extra long at the end.
Yeah. What else? Yeah, all those YouTube, Twitter, all those things.
Twitter.
Follow us. So let's hop into it. What?
Sure. Happy holidays, by the way.
Happy holidays.
It's been our Christmas, but
We're right in between right now. I don't know what
Yep.
it'll be when this episode comes out.
Yeah.
What? Maybe like Easter. Yeah.
Easter. Wow.
Surely not.
Hopefully.
Is that for real?
St. Patrick's Day, whatever.
Yeah, we're still celebrating Halloween. I think that's now a permanent fixture in this
I like
room.
it.
Yeah, I don't think it's coming down.
Max loves it. He tells me all the time, turn it on, turn the lights off, turn it off. Like, okay.
Superman, not Matt.
I'm sorry, Super Max today.
So, in our last installment of Fireside Tats, we talked mainly about choosing an apprentice, things to look for.
Right. Things out of their portfolio, personality,
Right.
their own personal drive, what they
Yeah.
really want to get out of it.
Yeah, can you live with them? Like you said, personality.
Can
all
you
those
live
kinds
with
of-
them? That's a good one.
All those kinds of things. Are they teachable? Are they
Right.
coachable?
Right.
So you found one, and now it's time to start apprenticing. So now it really gets difficult. And I'm going to let you take the reins on this one for the most part
Sweet.
because you've done a lot more of it.
I don't
than
know.
have.
Well,
But,
I mean, what part should we talk about?
well, I mean, how do you typically start your apprentices? Obviously, they don't start tattooing. They really don't even handle a tattoo machine.
I think we
for a
did
little
mention
while.
that before. Yeah, for the usually the first, say, even 6 months, at least 3 months plus, they don't touch a person. And that's probably one of the things we mentioned at the end of last show. If they're already tattooing on people, if they've gotten their equipment, they've gone ahead and gotten some stuff, gotten some pieces together, absolutely make them stop. You want to try to like break them of bad habits. You want them to basically stay on a regiment, stay on a program. But if they can't listen to a couple of simple instructions like don't tattoo on people right now, well, then they're probably not ready for it anyway, if they're not going to listen to you about one little thing like that. So that's one thing we try to make, especially at the shop. It's just to stop that. That way they really are starting on a fresh note. And they really don't need to be doing stuff on the side that you're not aware of and probably part of. And definitely, so the first couple months, we were meeting at the shop probably, at least 3 times a week, probably for about 2 to 3 hours a pop. And we're basically trying to just get the mechanics down of like how to hold your machine, how to set your equipment up, how to actually set your station up so that you feel comfortable, that you can tattoo on somebody, how to like sit, how to like approach the person, and then mainly how to put a stencil on. That's fairly important.
Of course, you're starting people early on doing these things.
I think so. I think because they had been in this, our last apprentice, of course, had been in other shops, so she was probably a little ahead of the game. But I think when you start that way, you start basically like getting an idea of your space, how you're going to be actually tattooing, and then how you're going to be working in that space. A lot of people, they think they just see it from one angle, they see it from one thing, so they don't get used to that. But getting used to the actual space itself, getting used to the instruments, I think is real important. And I think though, of course there'll be a lot of drawing on top of it, but as far as just apprenticing, usually, like I said, we were using pigskin, very natural, like I said, very easy, very close to skin, and just putting stencils on for the first couple times, like wiping it off, moving it to a new place, actually getting an idea of how much stencil you can lay on and what products you can use to actually get a stencil on. Even if you're not having luck with it sometimes, just doing it a couple times on a surface really helps, just to get, say, the mechanics down. Most people, you forget about that.
Picking up a machine, just placing a stencil, wiping a stencil off.
Wiping a stencil off, moving it around.
Seeing just how moist the skin needs to be before the stencil
and of course
doesn't take or blows out. Or,
and you can do that on people, but actually showing how, like, you have to make one that's, transcribable onto paper, something that makes a good carbon copy, something that makes a good heavy stencil so you can actually put it down. But I think that's part of that, just the, I think people still have problems with when they first start, is just putting a stencil on people.
And it's even more important to have a solid stencil to follow when you first start, because it's a lot harder to make up for it.
If you're not comfortable with laying lines out at all, then trying to go back into a stencil that's half there, and then not knowing like where to really approach the stencil, that's probably part of it too. Once you get it on there, of course, is how do you work in and how do you not wipe into your tattoo every time wiping a stencil off. And of course, we started with very small, say, tattoos. They were different images, but very simple, usually something organic. Flowers are always great. Something that they've drawn preferably too. We do have flash and stuff that are easy one-offs, and that's getting them used to taking an image, drawing that image, making a stencil for it, putting that stencil on an object, whether it be skin, fake, that kind of plastique stuff, the tat skin, any of those I think would work fine as long as those first couple of tries. You're really just trying to get those early mechanics. How do you put a stencil on? How do you become comfortable? How do you raise the settings so that you can actually manage it and actually tattoo on it, so you're not blowing your back out when you're trying to tattoo? A lot of just small things. Like I said, I think it's general mechanics, but we do that for probably the first, say 2 or 3 months, and maybe then basically in there, probably near the end, is then get machines out, show them how to actually set a needle in there, how to sometimes give it a little bow, how to make sure that it's tuned properly, and that they're watching their liner and shader tuning so that they get an idea of how to set their machines up. A lot of times, we'll go over that beforehand, just the mechanics of it. I'm sure we talked about that. What actually works, why it's supposed to work, why the electromagnetic properties are important, what are things that can easily that can short it.
The most common things that go wrong, things like that.
And so that, of course, is just getting an idea of what the machine, again, is running. How does it run? How does it feel in your hand? How much you really need to do to get comfortable. And like I said, that sometimes gets down to like, well, what are your comfortable grips? How much can you actually hold in your hand? How far down on it do you really need to hold so that you're getting an idea? Again, then it's hand mechanics at that point to get your hand ready to make marks to basically define your strokes.
Which is why it's so important, like you mentioned earlier, that preferably these small tattoos that they're doing, they've drawn
at least once. It gives them an idea. We definitely kind of, I think, from drawing it, get a good idea of like how you're going to approach it. Right. So even while you're drawing it, you have a good idea in your head how you're going to start, what end, what side, where you can get away with actually putting this on a person. And so for us, I think the average of it is like, how do we get rid of those early headaches that we know are probably going to be part of that line stencil? How do we maneuver the person so that they're comfortable and we can get a good flat surface? Now that's, with every tattoo, there's always different ways of doing that. Yeah. And that's explaining that so that you're going to be comfortable while you're going to be starting this piece. And then, of course, starting it. But that's usually, like I said, usually we probably don't even let them start tattooing on anything pigskin for probably like 3 months is what it really is. Yeah. I mean, of course, we've talked before about them working the front desk and doing other stuff, cleaning, setting up, cleaning up stations and stuff too. Yeah.
Sterilizing.
I think that gives you an idea of like exactly the mechanics of it, how to make sure you put your needles away, how you're safe while you're putting gloves on, how you clean your area with disinfectants or antimicrobials. That's all part of it before you ever really get tattooing on people. And that gets you, I think, comfortable with like a process. You need to go from A to B to C to D. And if you start seeing that they can't even handle that, you need to get them into it. You need to make sure that they know that this is a process and then it has a certain number of things that you have to do beforehand, just like prep work. To get you into a tattoo so you're comfortable with it. You can't skip steps, and that's usually what it is. If you start seeing them skipping small steps to get around to a final result, I think then you can kind of like say, if you can't get this right, we've got problems. It's just early things. If they don't listen to details, if they're trying to, like I said, skip process, you can get a lot of that out of the way before they ever really start on people. Because most of the time, people get into it, that's the first thing they want to do. I want to jump in on a person. I want to tattoo on people. And that's really the worst way that you could approach it. You should know everything beforehand before you ever sit down with an actual person and start tattooing on them. I mean, you may want that end result, but if you don't know how to resolve the tattoo that you put on there, well, what's the point? So just take it slow. That sounds crazy, but you'll get a lot more out of it.
I think those processes. I think that you're right. It's so important to. All of those processes, the setting up, the making and placing stencils, all those things, hopefully they're second nature by the time someone is putting their first tattoo on someone, because if they're not, you're just going to be so overwhelmed with, you're going to be nervous anyways, but you'll move so much more efficiently if you've set up and broken down your mentor station 50 times before you ever set up a machine.
Because then it becomes memory. It's say memory muscle at that point. Yeah. You don't have to worry about that. Hopefully, because it's all there in the back of your head. And if you keep that process, again, the process is I think about it when you first start, especially tattooing. Every line is like an A to B moment. A to B, B to C, C to D. If you can't, basically work that out is like kind of a mathematical, like you're going to probably start on your lower right hand corner and you're going to have to work up to your upper left hand corner for most people if they're right-handed. So if you approach it that way, I know people that love to start right in the middle, or I'm going to tattoo the eyes first, or it's like it makes no sense. It's like no, take it as a process, and just like the rest of it, take it from the lower right hand corner to the upper left-hand corner, and you'll probably, like I said, you'll never have these crazy mistakes where you wipe over your stencil a million times, especially most of the times you're wiping with your left hand, sometimes with your right hand, but very rarely. So you have to really get used to holding objects in your hand too. Using one as like a steadier one that pulls on the skin a little bit more. You have to get them used to that. To basically, what I used to always call is like this kind of 3-point process where your palm makes a base. Usually the outside of your hand makes a second, and then the outside of your other hand, your offhand, whether it be the fingers themselves or the back part of the hand as a stretching tool, that makes a 3-point that you can
Yeah.
basically put
Can
your hand
pull in
almost
3
anywhere,
different directions.
and you can pull it in 3 different directions, get a nice tight surface.
Yeah.
So trying to get them used to that idea that
Yeah.
you have to support yourself on a person now, usually.
Right.
Not all the time, but usually you have to get used to them as a moving object and in dimensions. So to do that, keep a nice, say, 3-point little trap to keep your image inside of, and you shouldn't have any problems. But trying to get someone used to that
Yeah.
is a wholly different, matter. Like how to use different parts of your hand all at the same time. We're actually pulling a line.
Yeah.
That's
And like you said, the client being the only foundation that you have
Usually.
it's not like you have your arm prop or your whatever to rest your
Right.
arms on. So those things are, and those are unfortunately things you just kind of have to learn on the fly. You can
Right.
you can be told that, but until you start doing it and
Right, wondering why the skin's bouncing because
Yeah.
you're not getting enough pressure.
Right.
Why? Like I said, it's so easy for an object to move on the round, like away from you,
Yeah.
because they're pulling away from you. Things
Yeah.
like that you don't see until it's really right there in front of you. And so if you get used to it being on the round, getting used to like holding it down, 3-point process, going from A to B, B to C, C to D, so that every line
and knowing what
makes-
that is before you start.
Yeah, it should
Where is
be
my
in your
starting
head.
point? Where is
Right.
my stop point for this line? How am I going to pick it back up? Things like that. And when you're thinking that way, it's almost like you're. It's like taking a marathon a mile at a time. It's like, oh, just have to get to this point. I just need to get to this point, and then
Right.
and then it's not so overwhelming, especially because a new tattooer is going to have problems with getting lines in skin because they're going to forget to stretch, or they're not going to be.
They're going to forget their angle. They're going to forget
Yeah.
a ton of things and things that you can't tell them, especially like with the grain of skin. It has a grain to it. If you're going in one direction, it will not take you nearly as well as you're probably going in another direction. And trying to get someone used to that they may have to move themselves, their body, or that image so that they can say attack it at a better angle.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of hands-on as well. That's something that you just don't get a good idea about. And mainly it's that depth to angle equation that's hard to teach someone until they're actually trying to put it into the skin.
Yeah.
So again,
And that's one thing that the skins the fake skins or even pig skins really just don't teach you that
They
well.
can't teach you.
because they're automatic. Because they're kind of taught just naturally.
It's like I said, the skin itself and that pig skin doesn't have as much of a grain. It's a little easier to probably get ink in than it is on a person, and it's a little more forgiving.
Yeah.
So you can have a couple of accidents on that, and it doesn't show up nearly as bad as it probably would on a person. Yeah. And that's one of the nice things about it. Like you can still make a decent image, but you can go back in and you can thicken up lines. You can show them how to do a little bit of what probably we call calligraphing a line, bumping the line up, or just doing a little line variation. It gives them a better idea of how to do that. And with pigskin, you can kind of let them go a little wild with it if they want to change some of the design. If they get an idea of and we do that all the time. Just because you put a stencil on doesn't mean you have to follow every line that you put in there.
Right.
If you see especially when you get on there, you can make if you sharpen the points a little more, you give it a little you can definitely change it. You don't have to be afraid of that. But showing them that is also sometimes just by changing a little, happy accidents happen. As long as you stick to the original plan, as long as it still looks good.
Yeah.
I think that, like I said, if you get them more comfortable with that, it's easier for when they actually do start working on people. Because even if they have a line that stutters or something, they've done certain things where they can, like I said, go back into the lines, clean them up, have an opportunity to do that before they just screw up on a person.
Talk for a minute about drawing assignments, things like that. Just because with the last apprentice at our shop, she's naturally very driven. She draws and paints all the time.
Right.
But you at one point said, look, I don't want you up here drawing and working on your own stuff. I want you to start drawing some more.
And hopefully she's not listening to this.
Yeah, more tattooable. And you actually set her up and she still draws flash sheets even now, every week.
And I have to admit, this wasn't just my idea. I'd been thinking about it, and then the main thing is that she's very self-driven, but it's one of those things, especially at the shop. I don't really like. Well, if you're working on something and you're taking up, say, 5 hours of your day at the shop working on something else, else, it's a little a little fruitless for me. I wish you would do that at home. Do it in the mornings, do it in the afternoons. Especially when you're first starting, there's usually not a lot on your plate. You don't have to come up with the same kind of designs or the same kind of amount of drawing as the average tattooist. Just usually, I mean, unless you're putting that much time into like starting your own stuff. And that was I was like, basically, I got in the idea of starting flash sheets because those are easier for you and easier for you to retranslate say imagery that you're not comfortable with. Say if you're looking in those flash sheets and all your flash is 15 years old and you're like, oh, I could freshen this up. You should. Yeah. You should take some of those same ideas and make them yours. And that was pretty much what was some of the idea behind it too. It's like in the end now, she's been doing that. And at first I was trying to get like, look, you've got all this time and extra stuff. You should be able to do a flash sheet a week, and then, after say, about 6 weeks of that, maybe 8 weeks of that, right around that, we switched to basically putting more imagery on there. So it was 2 really large images, but mainly after she got the idea that you should be able to crank out, say, 5, 6, 7 smaller pieces in a week easily, fully shaded, colored, and they should make sense to each other on a sheet. That's the one thing that you forget about, like when you're tattooing. Is like your tattoos have to bump up against other people's. Usually, you may have to work against your own pieces, and they should have a little bit of play to them.
They talked about that. You can't ignore the other pieces.
The other pieces, or you can't ignore your own work when you've got all this extra space between little things. So they should be reactive to each other. It's like you should be able to lay pieces out. And that takes an eye to it. Laying it on a sheet of paper and then having 5, 7 images on there, usually in watercolor, maybe a little colored pencil, but fully formed. At first, I think you could start with just black and gray pieces. I think it's just getting the idea of them being like an image and then creating that positive and negative. How much is too much? How much is too little? So that you can get some good contrast off the skin. Then it turned into more, like I said, the larger the images got, it's trying to get more into them. How much can you put into them? How much have you thought about these images? And then what do they look like as an end product on the sheet? And then how do they work with each other? So there's little things like I said, after a couple of sheets, you get a better idea of what you really do want. And they can be thematic. So if you're into a certain style and you're not getting to do that at all, well, this is a great opportunity for them to get into, say, new styles or recreating, different eras or different things that they may be interested in that you don't know about. And I think any of that works back into Flash. So like you said, if you like Japanese work and you want to work in, say, in more of an Oriental style, that's fine, absolutely. Exhaust it though. Don't just say, oh, I can only do 5 or 6 images and then boom, I'm done. It should be. If you're an artist, it should be, like I said, exhausting. It should be comprehensive, and it should be something that hopefully in the end is fun for them. But in the end, too, at this point, I have probably about 30 of these now, and they're going to make a great book.
Oh yeah.
So when she's fairly done with her apprenticeship, but the pieces get nicer. And so like every 2 weeks now, a nice color flash sheet, usually 2, 3 larger images. They started as probably 5 to 7 images and have just gotten, pieces. Like I said, and it gives you an idea of what her style really is and how a lot of times it's hard to pull one medium into another. So if you've never tattooed and then having to change your style to basically kind of equate and work with a tattooable style, I think it helps you to get closer to that line. The more you can see on paper, the more you're going to try to put into the skin, and you get a better idea of how much space you have, what you can get away with, what colors really look good against each other. Again, just color spotting, trying to get someone used to a palette. And I think in the end, it sounds like a lot of work, but you should be able to, to put together a flash sheet at least, say, once a week if you're starting, especially if you've not a lot of going on, if it's just in black and gray. And then, a color one every 2 weeks. Just as an exercise, it gives them, like I said, something on the side to do, but it's all theirs. They don't. Even those, I don't pick the image. I just give real good, I think, critical evaluations at the end. If she wants to show me even beforehand, I usually get involved. But again, these are for her, and in the end, hopefully, like I said, she's having to do a lot of image crunching as well. All of these are becoming a bank of information for her. She's had to research this stuff. She's had to go out and either find examples of it or draw from, because I hate seeing made like I think if you have a certain style, sure, you can draw certain things, but if you don't know how to draw, say, a rat or a wolf or
go look at a picture.
fox, go look at pictures, start making your own translations of those. You can of course see how other people have done it, but it's one of those the more you try to imitate somebody else's style, the more it's not going to look like
easy
yours.
to find a photo of a rat,
and
you'll make so much better of a drawing than trying to copy someone else's photo.
Exactly, and it can be as natural as you want. It can be as however, but you're going to have to translate that, and that's the main thing. It's like your translation of it in the end is going to be the most important part. So I often say, don't go looking at other people's work, because I'll know really quickly who you're trying to imitate. Yeah. And of course, a lot of her work has got arrows in it and dead horses and things like that.
A lot of subject matter comes back through with, and that's going to happen with anyone.
And it does.
One thing that I think I noticed as she started moving to larger pieces, and you were pushing this, get a piece of flash out every week or every 2 weeks, and they started to get larger. She learned how to, and fairly quickly, how to use the space effectively. And what I noticed at first was she would focus on the main image, and then everything else was kind of just thrown in as filler. And so you would see these things as filigree in the background of flowers that you would go like, well, that doesn't look like it belongs in this drawing at all. That this part looks great.
Right.
What did you do that just 5 minutes ago before you walked in here? This other part. And so that's one thing that I think when artists start, and she won't struggle as much because she's experienced that on paper.
Exactly.
But
experimenting on paper.
Yeah, a lot of people make that transition to larger pieces, and I know I was guilty of it. I felt like I had to fill the space, and I really didn't know what to use, so I would find myself like throwing things in or things that didn't contribute to the overall design at all. They were in there just because I didn't know what else to do.
Fill in that space.
Yeah, I just felt like I needed to fill the space. And a lot of people, I see that with a lot of people that are starting to take on bigger pieces for the first time, that's one of the biggest challenges they have is like the main image, whatever the thing is, whatever the tattoo is about, that image might be fine, but the environment that it lives in is really thrown together and doesn't contribute to the tattoo in any way. And and that really helped her.
I think it'll continue, especially when that's probably another part of it, that her first couple of tattoos that's are all smaller than my size of my hand.
Yeah,
and that was one of those. You can do tattoos. You can definitely think about how you're going to add on to them. But when you're starting, you should probably keep it to a maximum. Where like at first they're probably no bigger than my palm. Then they got, say, I have a pretty good size hand. So I think at that point it's like if they can do something that's like 4x5 or 3x5 or 4x6, something like that, and have a decent image and really get all the way through it, that alone, that piece will probably take them more than one session. It may take at least 3 to 4 hours for the average starting tattooist. They're really just not going to motorboat through it. And so you have to remember that too. It's like, how long will these people go before they basically start making errors? They'll start trying to, like, a lot of times that was the one thing that she had a problem with. If she didn't have a color study or didn't have a gray wash study, she would start to make just bad decisions, bad shading decisions, bad how do my lines even overlap sometimes, or how does my image all of a sudden start butting up against the skin tone, against other color forms or something, and she would make rash decisions that she had not thought out, and just go with them, and that's part of the process too. That sometimes you're like, you make bad decisions when you have not thought them out. So in the end, I would try to tell her, stop. Get someone. If you're having a problem, you're wondering if this is the way to go, and you're just gonna just headbutt your way through it, it won't work. It's gonna look unnatural. Very rarely do you make the right decisions when you've only been tattooing mere months. Stop. Ask someone. And that's a hard thing for most artists to do, is to even talk to someone else about their work. Never mind having someone basically tell you what the mistakes are while you're doing it, and it's on a person. That might be hard for you, but get used to it, because if you don't know how to tattoo, that's how it should be. You're gonna ask questions, and if you stop, like I said, halfway through a tattoo, and you've got the line work on there, and you're starting to have these color decisions that you're not sure about, stop. Just tell them, hey, come back the next time. for a starting tattooist, I don't think that you should be pushing yourself down roads that you've not traveled, and that you think that you're probably, this will be fine if I do this. I've seen it happen. It's just stop, ask questions. It's just a hell of a lot easier. Yeah. With her point, I guess the point being is that. A lot of times they don't want to take that. They think they know what it's going to look like in their head, so they start doing stuff. Her problem with a lot of her work when she came in was that she had a lot of modeled color. It's trying to get her to stop doing this like color next to color next to color next to color, because in her natural style, and especially in watercolor and stuff, it didn't look bad. The second you put it into skin, it's like, these are horrible decisions. Why are there so many different patches of color when they're not creating a texture? They're just in there all willy-nilly. And that's what it's like. You have to now think about what it's really going to look like in skin. And again, if you don't know what those inks look like, you having to mix down all these crazy, like, tonal, like, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. These are all the craziest, like, natural tones and stuff, trying to mix into tattoos. It's like, maybe stick with some tried and true stuff, get an idea of how the ink works in the skin first before you start taking over on your own design style. That's like, I think that's hard for most people. It's like you want to do something new and inventive that looks like your stuff, when you really just are learning the fundamentals at first. You can change your palette, you can change whatever you want to do later. Try just learning how to put it in first. Don't get so frustrated in there. I think you'll find it a lot easier. Yeah, and that's mainly what her not her problem. It's not a problem. It's one of those things you have to relearn. Like you said, you learning out of your own style into a new one.
Yeah, and everyone's going to be different. They're all, but everyone's going to bring something similar from their art background and try to incorporate it immediately when they haven't gotten the fundamentals down, and that's it's going to pose a problem, and that's where you come in as the mentor and help them make those decisions. And it's where the reason I brought up those flash sheets, it's someplace that you can that is someplace that you can work those kinds of things out and find a way to make the things that your apprentice wants to tattoo, to make those things tattooable, to find that kind of marriage between the style that they like to work in, the natural marks that they like to make, and mold those into something that can live as a tattoo.
Yeah, I'll take an example. The last sheet she turned in, one side absolutely gorgeous. It's mongoose and a cobra fighting with these floral elements in behind. And then she started to do these kind of experimental, like, overlapping circles that became color tones, so that each one had a different color tone in them. It's just some background work. It looked fine, but it was all experimental. On her other one, same kind of motif, different scene with a mongoose and a thing. She started to do these squares that were just, I mean, I say willy-nilly because there were only 5 of them. They were all the same size. Some of them came into the image. Some of them overlapped out of the image. But they did nothing. There was no color transitions. There was no, say, breakdown in material. There was no dark. They were just added in as like, I wanted to see what these would look like. Yeah. Horrible idea. Yeah. I mean, like, here one, like I said, with the color wheels and the circles, exhausted. She'd obviously done this on another thing, or had really played with it. Not as bad. All of a sudden, putting squares in the middle of this other design that had no squares in there, didn't need it at all. And again, you ask like, well, why did you do this? I just wanted to try to do something because now there's like these new, not new, but a lot of imagery that they're breaking down, say, matter inside, or doing what would be split screens, so that you're looking inside anatomy inside of a box while the outside is the exterior. And I see a ton of ways that you can get away with doing that. And this one, it didn't work at all. And it was so obvious, but after, say, 10, 15 minutes of cleaning the squares out, again, the image looks great. It's one of those, she worked it out on a piece of paper before she ever tried that on a person. And you get an idea. It's like, that doesn't work at all. Like,
that's great. And you're going to do things like that. Hopefully you do make those mistakes, because if you never make bad decisions like that, then you're not pushing yourself.
And that's what it's. Then there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing, like, so it's easy to correct stuff like that, and correct it on paper before you ever like, I'm just going to put squares in this tattoo I just did. Be like, did you think about that at all? Why are these all the same sizes? Why do they not do anything?
What do they do for the design?
And that's a small thing. I do think in the end the flash seats have really helped her, though. It's like
I really do. She's done that. I mean, now obviously, any apprentice you're gonna hopefully assign projects to, but that's gone above and beyond through Sarah's apprenticeship, and and I see a huge difference. I mean, she drew well when she came in, but the way that she is, the way that she's made her style tattooable, she really hasn't compromised the way that she works that much. When you look at her finished tattoos now, you're like, oh, I could tell that you did that. I mean, that looks like something that you could have drawn the day that you walked in here, but now it looks like a tattoo instead of.
And I think she takes to heart too, when she's doing some of the pieces, a lot more of like the material that she's going to be actually working in when she does the piece. And so you can see a really good, like, say, the color transition. She's able to like pick out what colors sometimes that we have and something she can get away with it, how you can do some blending, some fades, how they really, how you sometimes need to do, say, color fields on the outside to push it off of skin tones. She's become more aware of that, and that really helps. When you have someone that's basically can see how the images can really push off of, say, paper and then make instant translation onto skin. She's done quite well at that.
Let's take a quick break. I don't know where we are on time, and then we'll come back in just a few minutes.
All right.
Break time. All right.
Jiminy Cricket.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ,
Man, I don't know why. Maybe
Dominios.
because it was just the South Park of that. Listen, my favorite part of Christmas is the Aqua Teen Hunger Force Christmas album. I listen to it. I listen to that thing
I don't think
so
I've ever heard it.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Is it good?
I've had it for years now, and of course I don't listen to it any other time of year, but I leave it on loop. Like,
is it like
Christmas
Master
Eve.
Shake singing Jingle Bells or something?
Yeah, that's all. Yeah,
Jingle
it's
bells.
all of them. Carl is awesome in it.
Carl.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. It's just the best thing about Christmas. Everyone should check that out. It's so good.
I know I've never heard it, but
you
sounds
should.
great.
I'll burn you a copy of it. It's great.
I miss old Aqua Teen. There you go.
I don't. Is it still on?
No. I mean, you
know.
can still
You
see it, but it's not
Yeah.
not new.
There aren't
None of the
any
new
new
ones. As far as I know.
I don't know. All right. Well, let's get back to it.
Oh, right back.
Right back.
All
Right
right.
back. I wanted to ask. I started to ask in the first part of it, or I meant to ask earlier on, but you talked a little bit about you made some comment about, well, Sarah's still on the tail end of her apprenticeship, and we've talked before about when we're talking about apprenticeships, about how each state kind of has different
Legal limits.
like if it's a 1 year or 2 year apprenticeship, if there are continuing education requirements, all these kinds of things. And that's all state to state.
There should be.
But ignoring all that, or not ignoring it, but aside from all that, the length of an apprenticeship, is there a typical time period? Is it really just person to person? What are you looking for whenever you finally turn someone loose and say, all right, come to me if you need anything else, otherwise you're good to go?
Well, of course, legally in the state of Tennessee, it's 1 year. Of course, that's really just not enough time. So I think we probably say from like 2 to 3 years is probably normal. I think within 2 years, you get an idea of like the smaller pieces that you can do that you're comfortable with. Maybe you're not going to be comfortable approaching some tattoos yet. They still should, I think they should be no bigger than size of like an average person's hand. I think that you can easily add on to those pieces. Like she's definitely worked back in doing background and stuff to pieces that she has it started. But usually, I think at about that 3 year mark, you get a better idea of what you really can approach, and then you're gonna want to work larger. Most people, they just instantly start to want to like fill more space. Now it doesn't just that kind of step up takes a little more effort. It takes a little more work. It takes a little more kind of like. I'd say knowledge, but it's one of those how to pace yourself, how to time yourself, how to really break it down and say a procedure, where you're knocking out your darks and lights first, like you're lining and shading maybe, and then going in and actually doing, say, color plots where you're doing a good spot at a time and trying to work through a piece instead of I used to tattoo with kind of an all over, like clockwise, like dark to light, and of course after a couple of years of that you realize it's just ridiculous. You really should be able to finish certain pieces as you go through the piece, certain things for the piece, but try to, like I said, limit yourself to a certain number of hours per day working on a piece. I think that your average apprentice first year in is not going to get any more out of the third hour than the sixth hour, so they should be done in about 2 or 3 hours. They're not just going to like going to be able to get as much out of it as they don't have a little mental break.
Yeah, and to get away from it, something I do not in tattooing but in painting is I'll set myself 30-minute timers, and I started doing it because of these painting workshops I've been going to, and we work in 30-minute increments, and then a timer will go off and they'll go, okay, that's 5-minute break, and it gives the models a chance to break, but then it also gives us a chance to step away from the paintings, get back. So since I've been back home and painting more regularly, I've been doing that myself, and I kind of see myself as a painter right now, like a tattoo apprentice. I still am struggling with some, I don't know, stylistically with some things, how I want to handle paint. I'm pushing different ideas, and still kind of like throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks with a lot of my paintings. And I think that stepping away, I think exactly what you said. I'm not going to get anything out of the third hour of not looking away from a painting.
Right.
It's not going to get better, and it's even more important in a tattoo because the canvas can take as much as I can throw at it, and the skin just can't.
And a lot of people won't admit that. Like, they won't admit that they're in pain, or that you can usually tell as an artist. It's like all of a sudden they start to shiver or shake. Yeah. They start to have little things like, oh, I just need to use the bathroom, and that's every 15 minutes now. No one needs to use a bathroom every 15 minutes. They're having problems. Yeah. And I think the average person won't recognize that. I think and they really do need a mental break. If you can't, the average person doesn't sit for more than, say, 3 hours on anything, never mind just sitting in a chair for that long. So I think you get someone used to the idea that you can get up, you can take mental breaks and physical breaks. That's one of those I've noticed with. Now, this is just recently with like women apprentices. It's like they almost refuse to go to the restroom. It's like, God damn it, if you need to go to the restroom, get up and go to the restroom. There's no reason why you can't say, hey, we're going to take a break. I'm going to the restroom. Yeah. You shouldn't feel weird or ashamed. You shouldn't think of it as like some incentive, like, oh, this is my reward at the end of an hour of tattooing. It shouldn't be like that. No. You want to be comfortable. They need to be comfortable.
Yeah. Your comfort level is so important, especially when starting out when you're uncomfortable anyways. Right. You add a full bladder to that, and suddenly you're rushing things unknowingly.
And I'm not. That's just one thing. But I'm saying that you have to make these mental reminders too with your apprentice. It's like this isn't because they want to perform. They want to outperform. The problem is you have to remember they're human. They just can't. They just sometimes take this so much on that it's like you don't need to make this as like any more of a physical challenge as more of a mental challenge. Right. So try to remember that. Try to tell them this too. I mean, it sounds like a lot of stuff that you shouldn't have to say, but the average apprentice won't come clean about some crazy shit like that. Like if they have problems physical, or if they're like not used to leaning over. If they're like I said, if they're having physical stuff and they're like not aware that you can like raise like armrests or you can adjust the height or of a table. Small things that they may not realize that they're having problems with.
Yeah, the client has scooted away from you, and you're scooting across the floor,
chasing them down. But how long? I would say I think the average person should be at least 2 years. I think at 3 years you get a better idea of what you're capable of or what you want to get into, and then naturally, hopefully, at about like that 3 year stage, they want their pieces. They want to have bigger pieces. They want to take more skin, and people are usually start to ask of more of them. I think at that point you can kind of like said leave them be. Even like at the shop now, I still ask her to. I want to see the stencil beforehand. If the person's physically there, I usually want to see it on them so that I get a good idea of what they're doing.
And this is how many years in now? 3 probably.
We're close to 2. We're not 3. She's been at the shop because of piercing for a little longer, but okay. The average amount of time, like I said, right now she's almost at 2, I would think.
Okay. And you're still looking at stencils before she
everything. Only because most of the time I was only getting to see them on camera. I would ask her to take photos of it, but you can't change anything when you're looking at the photo of the already done tattoo. So you can't say, oh, well, maybe that line thickness need to be a little smaller. Maybe you don't need to start with a 7 where you could have started with a 5. Maybe that shouldn't be so close to the armpit when it really probably would have read better better, maybe a half an inch lower. You can't affect any of those things if you don't
Yeah.
see them beforehand. So if you assume that all of a sudden they're going to be putting on perfect stencils every time in the perfect place every time, they may be actually able to do a good tattoo. That does not mean that they're taking on some of the things like, are they putting the stencil on while their arm's down instead of it bent?
Yeah.
Small things. And if you don't see those, if you don't see catch them before they happen, you can't tell them about it. You can't say, hey, try this. Hey, try darkening your stencil so you have a darker stencil when you put it on. Like small things. I mean,
And
sometimes it's
that's
a size thing. It's like, why don't you blow that up 15% so that you don't have such a hard problem with some of the line weights and stuff. Small things that you cannot affect if you don't see it beforehand. And so if they're your apprentice, you should not be seeing them after the fact, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's too late. It's too late.
You've had you've apprenticed people that apprenticed in the same room next to you, and now this apprenticeship has been she
That's
does all of her
true.
tattoos in another room.
Yeah,
Do you think
no.
that's I mean, obviously it's ideal for them to be in the room with you.
Usually it's so much better. And
Has that
so if
been
you
a
don't
struggle, you think?
Yeah, I think it is. That and what I try to do now is that I just go in there more. So I take I'll try to take a break if they're working on if they're especially working on a piece that that's going to be longer than 2 or 3 hours, and you're not going to be sharing a room with them.
Yeah.
Take breaks on yours and go take a look and see what they're doing.
Yeah.
And again, make sure you see the piece before it ever starts. That way, you're comfortable with it. They're comfortable with it. And I mean, it may seem like they're getting this like that they have to do so much to be able to tattoo. Like, I'm not just making extra miles involved in this. I'm not trying to put up extra humps to jump over or whatever. This is for them. And if they don't see any use of that, like I said, this is so that if they have anything they want to ask, it's their last chance too.
Yeah.
And because you can't hold their hand for a lot of this, it's like they have any questions on color, if they have any questions, that or if you want to add anything into it, you absolutely should tell them. And I do. I tell them in front of the client. I tell them in front. That way, this isn't a secret.
Yeah.
And so if I come in there going, why haven't you done this, or why is this going on, the client knows it as well.
Yeah.
And that is not a headache for them. It just is so that this isn't something secretive. This is done on them, for them, with them. And hopefully in the end, it's all, like I said, you'll never remember this tattoo. That's what I tell her all the time too. It's like, so they will be wearing it forever. They will have your name attached to it forever. And so you've got to
Long
make
after
the
you forgot
most of it while they're here, not while they're out, or not when they're, because you can't do anything about it then. You can
Yeah.
only affect it now.
Yeah, I really do think it's not that, and some a lot of shops have kind of an open setup, a more open setup than we have anyways. We have a lot of kind of more private rooms broken up, but ideally, I think you would have your apprentice as close to you as possible, because a lot of things they're going to be hesitant, no matter how many times you tell them. I think to to stop and ask questions when you're having trouble. They're not going to do it every time. They're going to try to figure some things out. And when you can hear the machine and you know that there's an issue without them even saying anything, or just not that long ago, I walked into Sarah's room to get some supplies, and I could just see she looked stressed in the face. She was walking out of the room, and I said, how's it going in there? Oh, I've been adjusting my machine like crazy. I can't figure it out. I can't get it. I'm splattering everywhere. Every time I go to put a line in, it just throws. It's just spitting everywhere.
Spitting.
And I was just like, well, that's not. You've been adjusting your machine? Yeah. Well, did you change your needle? Yeah, I changed the needle. Did you change the tube? No, I haven't changed the tube. It's like, well, it's not, your machine doesn't cause it to splatter, really. It's usually just a needle or a tube. Like, if the needle didn't work, change the tube. Well, she had spent who knows how long, 20, 30 minutes or more, screwing with her machine, playing with the contact screw, or, maybe adjusting
Which you
rubber
should never
bands. Or
do.
like,
Right.
I mean, all these things, it's like, well, has it been doing that, or has it just started on this one tattoo? It just started on this tattoo. Okay, well, then your machine it hasn't, if your machine worked fine on the last tattoo, and it's spitting ink on this tattoo, what did you change?
I was about to say, but that's
so
15 years of knowing that,
Yeah, but the point being, like, they're not going to come to you for
No.
every little thing. So the closer you can be to them, you'll
Right.
save yourself. You'll save yourself and them time, and save the client money.
and definitely because she's asked questions like, it's hard. I think she's hard pressed to get up and like, hey, can you tell me what the hell? But usually, like I said, usually if you go down the checklist, you're going to find what it is. And if that's what it is, if it's just a tube tip, you've dropped it one crazy way, or if it's got a little extra bevel on it to just if your needle's riding a little too long in it, I mean, it could be a little every one of those. But of course, it's good to have. It's good to have other people that they can come to as well.
Yeah.
Like I said, they should be asking questions. That's the one thing that I think you're gonna find is a real problem with most artists. They don't like to ask questions. They don't. I don't know if it's a pride thing or they just get it stuck in their head that they're gonna figure it out themselves. It's like, just ask. People don't mind. Like, especially we don't mind sharing. There's no. I'm trying to tell her. There's no secrets. There's no hidden
no one in your
wizard
shop
behind
should
the
mind
fucking
sharing. It's for the benefit of the.
And
of
we've
the
definitely
group.
we've definitely gotten questions about that too. About that people have said that they're not getting as much out of it.
Yeah.
They're not getting as much hands-on experience. It's like how do you get someone to give that to you? It's like you just bug the shit out of them.
Yeah.
That's really how it has to be. If they don't feel like they can, then there's a problem. Obviously. So if you're an apprentice and you don't know if you're getting as much out of it as you can,
Make sure that you're not the problem.
right. Keep
Start
bugging the
asking
shit out.
questions.
Ask lots of questions. Keep your sketchbook handy. Write everything they say down. Watch them tattoo as much as possible. That's another thing that she really does do. Even now, it's come in and watch for a little while.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, it's helped to have if you share the room, of course, it really helps. Usually, a lot of times, those apprentices will also be setting up your equipment, breaking down your equipment, so they're still into that. Like, how do they set their stuff up? Why? How can they get into a tattoo as fast? That's usually what it is. It's like you have all these tricks now to get into the tattoo just a little faster, and if you can teach those and they get the same good habits instead of bad habits, it makes for a better shop. It makes for a better apprentice. It makes for a better tattooist in the long run. And like I said, if they're not asking questions, something is wrong. Something is blocked up. Something is not right. If they do not ask questions, they are not learning. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, and and that's just a lot of that is making sure that you're providing a comfortable environment where they feel okay asking questions, and they, a lot of, we've said 100
I'd be like,
times.
fuck that. Even if they don't, they should be asking questions.
Artists are weird. A lot of them are really introverted, and they have a hard time with that.
bad.
Anyways, there's a lot of ego. People want to prove that they know how to draw or whatever it is. So it's a challenge taking on an apprentice, and that's why I wanted to break this show into 2 episodes because and we probably still just scratch the surface. There's tons of things we probably just kind of glazed right over that you could use more time. But make sure that take your time just to kind of, since it was over 2 episodes, to run back through it. It's really important if you do your homework on the front end and be patient and make sure that if you're going to take an apprentice rather than just bringing on a seasoned artist, if it's something you think you want to do, which we talked about in the first part of this. Be patient. Make sure to pick someone that you think can be part of your family there, because if they're defensive, if they don't seem coachable, if they've already been tattooing out of their house or whatever it is, it doesn't matter how well they draw. It's good. You're just going to butt heads. You have to. The biggest thing is that if you find someone that you can live with and that's coachable on the front end, you'll make them a better artist. You'll make the shop a better place. You'll have an easier time apprenticing them.
And they may never tell you that. So just get used to that. They may never say thank you in the long run. But is it worth it for you? Is it worth it that giving somebody an opportunity? Is it worth like having someone come into your shop that may be there for quite a few years? And that's the really
hopefully,
that's
you bring
how
them
it
in,
usually pays off.
hoping
If
they'll
someone
be
comes
permanent.
in from out on the own, they have no like attachments. They have really nothing to do with your shop. And so having someone that trains there, having someone that really puts a lot of effort into it and that learns there, they may stick around a little longer. Now, I'm not saying that's true one way or another, or if you're trying to get them, but that's what you hope.
Provide an environment that people want to stay in. I mean, if you've got if you have a nice shop that they can build a clientele and build a business in, then why wouldn't they stay? But yeah, I mean, choosing them, being careful on the front end. I really think the thing that I know we go back, we've talked a lot just about Sarah's apprenticeship, the most recent apprentice, and there's been tons of, she's just the most recent, but there have been tons of apprentices that have come through Underground Art in the 13, 14 years that I've been there, and more before I started there. And the biggest things that I see, or the thing that I've noticed that makes things that I've noticed have made such a huge difference are the making sure they're drawing things that are tattooable. That those flash sheets have been. I don't think Sarah knows how valuable they've been to her. She is so much better than she would have been if she had just been sitting around doing
and
watercolors of her own work.
You can see it in her own work now. Her own work that isn't shop related is tighter. It's better. It's well informed.
There's a reason for it's the composition's laid out well. There's a reason for everything in the composition serves a purpose, and that's what separates mediocre tattoos from great tattoos, from good tattoos even, is everything contributes to the piece, and not just like thematically like it belongs in the piece, but even it can be squares or circles or whatever, but it needs to be that for a reason. It needs to, if there's a circle, it's because it follows a shape of the body. It contributes. It marries the tattoo to the area that it sits on, and those flash sheets have been great for that. I wish I'd done more of that. And color, especially for people that struggle with that anyways. A lot of people want to go all crazy high key color, and that's why so many people push straight to this kind of traditional Americana stuff, because they can cheat it so easily, because they're not willing to experiment with value and chroma and light and dark and all these things that just take practice, and you just have to push yourself. And all the best tattooers do that. You see their sketchbooks, and they're full of colored pencil sketches, or full of little watercolors or acrylics where they've tested all these, like, what you start mixing. That's where painting comes in to be so handy. You start mixing things together that maybe don't belong together. You would never think to mix together, like, I don't even know what color this is at this point. I've done so much, now all I know now is it needs to be a little bluer, or it needs to be a little redder, or it needs to be this, and you learn that by doing exactly what she's doing.
Experiment on their side is amazing, and like you said, and it gets them into like basically having to show a lot more for their work before they ever start. But like I said, for her especially, and for most apprentices, you're going to be better informed when you're actually doing that tattoo piece. If you've done a full shaded and colored study, I mean, you have something to work from. You have something that you are going to make even better when you see on the skin. It just usually works that way. While if you're having to make everything up on the fly, it's not like I said, you have not thought it out. It's
and you can get away with that after years and years of doing it, but you just can't do it.
Like I said, that's a little different. Like I said, at the beginning, it's basically how do you make someone's work tattooable? How do you translate your own work into something that can go on the skin? And I think that's a really important part of it, is exhausting it on paper first.
Yeah. Cool. Was a fun episode.
Yeah, I hope that helped some people. If we didn't hit a certain topic or subject in the middle of that, you can always give us a shout out.
Yeah, we could probably do a full episode on a dozen things within that, I'm sure. And if anyone wants to know more about any of it or wants to contribute anything, I mean, there's no one way to apprentice someone. So if you've apprenticed, if anyone out there has some tips that they'd like to share, that'd be great. We'll put them in the comments on YouTube. We've gotten and speaking of that, I really appreciate the comments we've gotten over the last month or two on YouTube. They've been so good, so nice. They people are, it's people that say, I just completely stumbled onto this. I never heard of you guys before, and they'll bring up something specific that we mentioned that helped them, that that's great. I love that. So keep doing that. Just
in case you need anything, that's what we're here for.
Yeah,
we want to be friends.
Episode 45 is in the books.
In the books, yeah. I mean,
Happy New Year, everybody.
Whoa. Yeah, Happy New Year. Are we good? Nothing this year we're going to do?
Are we going to do a New Year's episode?
I don't know.
I'm down for it.
All right. We had a blowout last year.
Yeah, we had a blowout New Year's episode last year.
We all had
come up with something New
Year's
resolution-y to do. Yeah.
I got one. It's going to be the same as last year.
Your resolution?
Yeah.
Did you do it last year?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
That's why it's going to be
good. Yeah, that's the best part about resolutions. You can just recycle.
I think I was going to learn more Spanish, and I learned probably zero.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know what zero is in Spanish. That's how much I learned.
Yeah,
zero.
What about resolutions for the podcast?
Podcast resolutions?
I don't know. I mean,
grow. Yeah, we're gonna grow our beards back out for the podcast.
You are. You're the only one.
Emily did a great job with her resolution. She was going to cook a new meal every week.
She did a great job.
How many new meals have we had
and
this
they were
last
so
year?
Good.
Probably like 50. She's done it almost every time.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, that she's used the podcast as those new meal.
I think it's
things.
a great
That's worked
idea.
great. She actually stuck to her resolution. Yeah, it's been great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.